Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a Critical Look. That's the one where we don't talk about music and we talk about other stuff.
Yep. It's been a hot minute.
Yeah,
We're sorry about that.
Yeah, we saw that request to finish going through Dear White People and realized it's been a couple of months. And on top of that,
we've been busy.
Our classic Quest episode of this week, we had some issues with recording, so we were like, right, we should do this. And here we are back with this. So we are at episode 9 of the Critical Look series, which is covering...
Episode 7.
No, the Critical Look series that we're doing is two episodes ahead of the Dear White People series. Anyway, so it's chapter 7 of Dear White People that we are talking about today.
Yeah, and this one is like mostly like featuring and about Gabe, the white guy.
Yeah. And episode kind of starts off with like him calling Sam, because as we recall from the last episode, Sam and Reggie were having their moments, and she chose not to go to this rally business and
to be with him.
Anyway,
which is a pretty big deal for her.
And a pretty big deal for him. Like, you could tell something was weird, something was up, because she was like a huge protagonist in making that happen, and then we flip over. Anyway, so he can tell something's up, so I guess we're getting... And then the narrator kind of drops in, basically talking about the shit he has to deal with being the token white guy in this squad of people.
Yeah, like the internal struggle that he's going through, and like how sometimes like he wants to just scream, but like he can't because he feels like he can't complain about anything because he thinks that, or he knows.
He's white.
Yeah, because he's white, because he's a white male. And because, like, he can't compare his struggle at all with the struggle of those around him. And those around him are all, like, these, like, college, university-aged black people. And so he can't compare what's going on with his life as a white male to
it's a little more than that.
And it's, like, that kind of struggle.
It's more than that, I'd say. And it's something I kind of relate to as I try to... So, like, you go up from a position where you find
out...
Like,
how to care.
You're a white male and you're the worst piece of shit on the planet is something you find out at a certain point in the last couple of years. We're the worst people. And so, you try to go out there on your quest to, like, educate yourself and integrate yourself into various communities and be like, yo, okay, I'm apparently the worst person ever. Teach me what I gotta know to not be, like, part of the worst group, etc. But then, as you start going through it, you start noticing that as much as... There are a lot of ignorant-ass white people, and I want to put this down. There are a lot of ignorant-ass white people that I unfortunately have to talk to and deal with on a regular, and I get where the frustration comes from, let's say.
But I do not think that there's a lot of ignorant of every people.
That's, I guess, where I'm coming from, or where I was going next, is that a lot of these comments that get made about white dudes... Imagine being that white dude for a minute. I mean, yes, finally, it's our turn to take some shit and all this other stuff. And I'm not saying that it's not justified, but to a degree, there's a underlying level of hypocrisy in being expected to, let's say, sit there and shut up while people are literally doing what they've criticized you for doing, what made you be the worst person ever is okay for everyone else to do as long as you are not, and as long as you're in the right group that is allowed to do it. And this gets explored throughout the episode. Like, forget the chronological side of what's happened in the show. You all probably watch the episode. But as you see, like, when they're talking to the various ethnic or minority groups to try to recruit them.
They talk to the Asian Association.
And, like, the girl there basically implies some shit,
because they're, like, trying to, like, to get, I don't know, the Black Association to do something with them. And
they're trying to basically organize a protest
the
to
rally,
vilify the radicals to make the
town hall.
Right. To make the town hall more effective by protesting it, creating, basically appealing to all groups and creating the largest impact. But so in order for their protest against this town hall is fucking useless. What, they're gonna sit there, say more blah blah blah. Everybody knows it's bullshit. I agree. I see this shit happen all over Montreal, and it's Montreal, and it's still bullshit. It doesn't mean anything. But, like, no, for real, like, for the most part, you go to these town halls, and what gets accomplished, it's a
lot of agenda, and that's about it.
And if you want anything to get done, you best be willing to show up to the next 9 to 10 months worth of town halls. It's not just anyway. So town halls are whatever they are, and yeah, the idea of getting an open conversation, that's what it's about. So they're trying to recruit all of the different ethnic or minority groups, we can call them.
Yeah, and so they go to the Asian girl, and so she's like, okay, well, we'll just have to shift. We were having a showing of Bowling for Columbine that night, but we can shift that, you know. And then Joelle, one of the black girls, was like, well, why are you guys watching Bowling for Columbine? And she's like, well, we can't just, you know, have...
We can't give a shit about gun control.
Yeah, like, why can't we care about this stuff, too?
And
it's like, we're not just caring about, like, swords and, like...
Sword control.
Sword control, yeah.
And it's interesting, right? And then we go up to the LGBTQT... fuck it. Anyway, there were extra letters. I didn't know I and A are now part of it. I cannot keep up with this letter strand. Every time I hear it, it's longer.
I don't know anything about that, but okay.
So, and then we find this group, and then we find out that this group is competing with that group, and et cetera, et cetera. And what you're really seeing is that the various groups harbor a lot of hatred for each other, and it seems to be more like you're allowed to almost say certain things to certain people as long as you meet the right criteria. And so as Gabe, being the white dude surrounded by all this, is sitting there going, like, he calls kind of Joelle on her accidental racist comment, because he's probably the only one in the whole equation that has had to actually address the fact that you're not allowed to say a lot of these things, whereas all the other groups don't seem to have the same rules applying to him. And I get it. This is the era of white dudes taking some shit. I'm totally understanding and fine with that. But people do need to acknowledge that it's a slippery slope, and if you're not careful, it just turns into blanket hatred. And I think that's what this little section of the episode was trying to portray. It's like the other side of the fence, right? Like, so he should shut the fuck up for a minute, but you do see him have to say, fuck white people, even though he wanted to say something completely different. And it is a little bit whack that this individual is being put into this position just because he's trying to understand and be a part of it. It's like he has to suck a dick just to be allowed to hang out with the cool kids.
I guess. But it's like constant, you know, and it's just because, like, you know, it's going to be, and it's always like that's what that's what they were showing in this episode, is like the internal struggle that's going on always, like, about what he's having to go through, and like how he's, no matter what he's gonna do, his on the inside, his identity is like, it's just not the same as a black person in, you know, even at the same time in the same place in the same situations.
But,
like, things are just going to be different. And so he just has to understand that, and like that's what he's kind of coming to face with in this episode.
And then just the reality that he's not really a part of the group. He's almost like a visitor.
Like, and that's kind of how you see it at the end, like when he goes and like faces like the, you know, like all his people.
Well, there's a reason for that, right? So there's a couple of other plot points, I guess, in this episode. So we have the whole part where, you know, Gabe and Joelle have a conversation about Sam and Reggie. Basically, you know, Gabe's up. Reggie's flossing the whole episode, like, getting closer, coming in, stuff like that. Like, making it clear he's putting it down. And what was really interesting, something that I did, like, I noticed, like, about 2/3 of the way through, is he starts fantasizing about
fantasies.
But it's not weird. It's very, like, specifically cliche, right? So he starts fantasizing.
This is Gabe fantasizing
about Sam and Reggie fucking. And it's,
but not even at first. Like, they're not even, like, actually having sex.
No, it's like the black exploitation films of, like, the 70s and 80s, the overly cliche shit. And it's just showing that when inside of his mind, as much as he feels this internalized struggle, his fantasy is this twisted, like, throwback to some racist times. Like, they're not even just people. It's like,
one
they're
of them
token
at the end
fucking
is like,
characters. My
like a
Nubian
1970s,
sister.
like,
It's like the worse he's getting paranoid, the more racist his fantasy's becoming. And I don't know, man. All I know, like, it's a little bit like, I believe that a lot of people probably do that shit, you know? Like, again, like I said, I've encountered a lot of white ignorance, and I could see how a lot of people just look at black folk as completely different in terms of even down to how they hang out when no one's looking. Like, it was just such a twisted fantasy. An interesting perspective on that, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I mean, like, that's what's going on. It's just, like, him trying to, like, figure it out. And then, like, yeah, those fantasies were so weird because they were so, like, cliche and... Anyway, I don't really have anything more to say.
That's fine. I just thought it was an interesting point. But yeah, so they're just kind of paranoid, and you can see how Joelle is, like, flat out suspecting it, but doesn't really want to say it to Gabe because she doesn't want to believe it to be true, and Gabe doesn't really want to have the conversation because he doesn't want it to be true. But they're almost like in this disillusion, disbelief.
Like, you know, as a white man, that, like, he just won't understand.
Well, I think it's...
But, like, that's even, like, what he questions. Like, that's what he asks her.
I mean, no, I think that statement was more like just the cliche, you have that look, and you know how people get looks. But I think what was interesting about that part is it was meant to bridge the gap of the racial things. It's like, this is some normal ass shit that everybody of every relationship has to deal with.
Yeah.
And I think that to offset the idea of all the racial tensions that was otherwise in this episode, they have this core cheating element, just such a universal thing, like just confusion of...
Well, love and relationship, and you know that this happens with everybody, no matter what. And then Joelle basically goes on to say, like, you know, like, if I were you, I would fight for your relationship with her. And then we find out that Joelle also has a thing for Reggie, and then there's like this like weird kind of hierarchy that's going on because Gabe kind of asks like, well, why isn't that happening with him and you? And she was just kind of like, well, you know.
Well,
so she was kind of saying, like, she's kind of, like, secondary to Sam. And she knows kind of her place. And so if Sam wants to be with Reggie at this moment, or for whatever reason, like, she can't interfere. Like, she kind of has that.
And then there was also that Indian guy who she almost seemed disgusted at the idea of dating. I don't know if it was because he was Indian or if it was because he was a creep. It could have been one or the other, but she almost seemed like it was, I don't know, while they were recruiting the different groups, and she was like, oh, fuck it, drop those guys. I can't remember his name, starts with an M. Oh. Anyway, so that part happened. And then, I guess there's the, so then, you know, they go to, like, the white party, that's, Gabe and Sam, and they're sitting around discussing the idea of some movie that was a classic that's about some illustrious affair. Mm-hmm. And then Gabe gets real petty, like real dudes. Don't act like Gabe, man. If you're gonna have some problems with your woman, have the conversation, not in front of all your goofy white friends. Like, go and have it in private. Don't get petty like that. Like, it's just unbecoming of anyone. Ooh. Even if you're right, it's just unbecoming and tacky to have that conversation like that. That bothered me a bit. It was like, come on, Gabe, you're losing your moral high ground that you've had this whole time.
But, like, that's kind of what is going on, is that he's kind of, like, fed up at this point. He doesn't know, like, quite where to fit in, and he's kind of like, why am I wasting my time? Like they just won't accept me. Like, I can't get in, and, like, you know, he's trying. And so, like, it's just kind of...
In his mind, I guess I see what you're saying. So in his mind, also on top of that, the super black activist guy is just taking his girl in his head too, right? And anyway, so he calls out the affair thing. She kind of doesn't anything, and then they have this big "I love you" moment where like he's just saying "I love you" to like keep her, and she says
it back
out of guilt almost, I think, because she knows she done fucked up in her mind, and so she's probably just overwhelmed and realizes this will work, and
then they have like a lovely romantic sexy evening, and then they wake up, I guess, later on,
and Lionel, you know, dude as he is, has written another article about the police thing where the call has been released. Now we find out earlier in the episode that what's his name, Gabe is the one who placed the 911 call that ends up with the gun pointed at Reggie.
Yeah.
But,
you know, truth be told, is that he didn't know that they were going to do that, right? Like, nobody knew that he was going to show up, or the cops were going to show up and like, point a gun.
And then, you know, but he doesn't tell Sam, and what's her name?
And Joelle says, don't you ever talk about this again. Like, don't ever tell Joelle, like...
And then...
He tells her.
Well, no, he doesn't. It's not that he tells her. It's as he wakes up after the romantic evening, she gets the notification that Lionel's article's out about the police calls in the article, and she starts playing it, and she looks over, and
right.
it's Gabe's voice, and he tries to, like, play it out. It could be anyone, and then she just fucking, like, walks out. Then he can't find her or anything, and that's where he, like...
No, he tells her. He tells her what happened.
Well, yeah, he does, but then she, like, walks out and
Yeah.
bounces out, and then he can't find her. He's calling her, so it's a lot of her, like, disappearing on him in this episode, which... You know, it's not conducive to a healthy relationship. But anyway, so it's, you know, and then he, like, finds her in, like, with everyone, all the black folk. And Reggie's, like, there right next to her and everyone.
And there's a lot of, like, it's very, like, awkward and everything and very tense. Like, you can feel that. But, like, there's a lot of mixed welcomes. Because some people are like, well, you know, like, he was just doing what everyone was doing. And then... You know, like, everyone was kind of scared and nervous about what was happening. Yeah, okay, someone called the cops. Like, nobody knew that this was going to happen. Like, how could it be? But then, like, Reggie was really upset. And so was Sam.
And I don't know, you had a range of why the fuck you call the cops to, come on, he didn't know.
Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting thing, because if I were in that moment, everything that I would have been trained to do from, like, the age of a child would be to call the cops. There's no, like, G code. There's no need for, like, avoidance. It's if you see a problem like that, like, and even to that end further, it's almost like we're told don't intervene because the situation could get worse. Call the cops and solve the problem. And then I know that on the other side of the fence, that, you know, certain groups aren't going to call the cops because, you know,
it's more dangerous for them to call the cops.
And it's interesting just to show that, like, ignorant moment resulting in such a drastic fucking action. Like, the whole police thing is fucking weird, right? Like, it's a giant conversation where it ranges from the fuck the police attitude to, like, the cops are people and all sorts of shit in the middle. But I can tell you one thing. I do not think that if I were in that kind of a party, I would call the cops at this time, whereas a younger me might have been inclined to, because it's undeniable that the police in a tense moment seem to not be very safe anymore. And letting...
At least, for the most part, in America.
Even being in that party moment and watching that party, it's like the cops didn't actually need to get called. Like, it was escalating. A fight was going to break out. On a fight breaking out at a frat party is one thing. Even if it could have some escalated tensions, even if shit was a little bit fucked up, etc., it seemed a little bit of a, like, cowardly move to just, like, instantly call out the cops in that moment. And I want to say that I would personally be like, why the fuck you call the cops? Because of the principle of it. But I don't understand how anybody could put the burden of responsibility of the whole gun being pulled on Gabe.
It's not on Gabe, no. That's it. Like, you know, of course, yeah, Reggie's obviously pushing, like, his emotions and his anger towards him just because he needs someone to do that towards. But it's misdirected, clearly.
And like, it's like in a moment like that, there are a lot of other moments where calling the cops might have been the move.
Yeah.
And to, like, and it's so fucking weird how blurry the line is. But I don't know. It's like, I guess it's like the entire disconnect of branding and messaging. Like,
you know, and like, as like, you know, I guess white people were told, you know, oh, if you see something like that or whatever, you should call the cops. Or if something's happening that's bad, you can call the cops. You can trust them. Da 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 da. But like,
don't trust the police.
Yeah, it's like, you know, I guess slowly but surely you learn that, like, you see what's going on in the world, and you know that maybe in certain times you shouldn't trust the police.
And I want to ask you all something here, because this is a conversation. I want to, like, pivot the topic just slightly. I've been going back and forth with, let's say, an older white dude at work. He's in his 40s, and he's white, and he's got wealth and a few other things, right? And Buddy is convinced that common sense is a thing. And if we want to apply the idea of common sense to this situation, from Gabe's perspective, the common sense move is to call the cops because of his background, his experience, and everything. From the black folks' perspective, calling the cops is never the right move from the all different groups, right? So it's interesting how, and I'm wondering if in like the next episodes we'll get to see some more on this. Should he have called the police
maybe
subject?
that's also like why things maybe in certain communities become more dangerous, because it's like, you know, maybe fights and like violence and stuff that's happening like in the communities might become, you know, higher and stronger and more violent because people are still more scared, or I guess still scared to call the cops, because like that would be like a risk of getting shot.
Well, then a whole other note, like even
Does
here.
that make sense?
Yeah, there's that, but then there's the futility of calling the cops too. I mean, I don't know what good comes from it a lot of the times. Like if you have a problem, even here in Montreal, in Canada, where things are supposed to be allegedly better, it's like I can tell you the one time I needed to call the cops, it was useless. You open up the case report, nothing happens. It fucking goes nowhere, and it's like just jerking off into the fucking air. It's there's not even a benefit. So in a hostile environment, at a campus with you know, I didn't even think about that, eh? Gabe chose to call the police at a seriously racially tensioned situation college campus. It's kind of a dumb move. I still don't think Gabe's responsible for the gun thing.
No.
I do think that it's an interesting commentary on common sense. How it's not a universal idea. And if you just...
Well, everyone has their own version of common sense,
which
I
means
guess.
it's not really common sense. But when I think a lot of the issue when you look at that last scene is everyone's idea of what is common sense in that moment kind of comes out in their various emotional reactions.
Yeah.
So Reggie and Sam being the extremists, their common sense attitude is how the fuck could you call the cops? Whereas you see on the other end of the spectrum, the more social
peaceful
media hipster-y types of guys are like, how could he have really known? And kind of having a different level of empathy and compassion because that's their version of common sense. Yeah. I just wanted to... I figured it was an interesting just thought, a way to end this.
No, it's good. I think so.
Because I don't know if there's much more to talk about in this episode. Do you have additional thoughts or ideas?
No, not really. I mean, I think that it was most of it.
There was the very clear move of Reggie putting his arm directly around Sam and not stopping it, with him marking his territory at the end, and Sam basically saying, "You let this happen, fuck that," and Reggie moving in at the end. And I thought that was just so fucking sad. Forget everything else. Like, what a breach of loyalty. She just told the man he loved her, and on the other fucking note...
And they had that beautiful night and whatever.
And it really bothered me.
Sam was a bit of a thought at that moment.
And it's just like, how are you going to go flip so quickly like that? Like, how could you do that? I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I've gotten into so many Facebook fights by accident over, like, just trying to have a conversation about a subject. You see some ridiculous meme or something, and you're like, that doesn't add up. There's something weird. And then the next thing you know, you're white and the end of the world and shit. And it's like, really? She gonna end the relationship over a police call over that? Like, it's such a fucking, like, come on, Sam. You're better than that.
Like, she has to know. I mean, come on. She knows him.
And are really the two most noble characters on this show. These fucking, like, yeah, Rally, we're the best. Really? They're going to be the fucking worst ethical characters?
But he was also a coward in the fact that he just didn't tell her. Like, why didn't he just tell her? You know? Like, he knew sooner or later it was going to come out.
How do you know? Like, I don't know. Those are... How? She wasn't available to talk to him. She was with Reggie the whole time. To be fair, like, it wasn't exactly like they had a whole bunch of time to throw out that conversation. I would say I'm still siding with Gabe on that one.
But even, like, the entire time they were together, I mean, they were still...
If you just have a big I love you moment, you're not about to drop a bombshell like, so yeah, I called the cops.
Okay.
Especially if you're spending the whole time being insecure and paranoid because you know that some shit's happening with the next... Like, I mean, I get where he's coming from. I don't want to hold him... And it's not like a month went by. It was like a couple of like days, I would say, in that whole like timeline of this episode is like fair. A day or two. Like sometimes you need the right moments. Anyway.
True enough.
So yeah, I was displeased with that and his fuck at the end. Like I've had that
like
fuck
he kind of
come out
like
of my mouth.
Stepped back. Like he was like, oh shit. Like he was realizing like what was happening exactly.
And yeah, so. That's the end of Dear White People episode 7's review on Behind a Suit with your boy HSR and Bonnie. Since I think we failed to introduce ourselves at the beginning of this one, we failed you.
Sorry.
Well, we can't promise the quickest turnaround on the next episode.
We're gonna try to get to it a lot faster, but
it's been a busy couple of months with just the summer and social activities and family obligations and all that shit. So once the winter comes around and we're hibernating again, I'm guarantee you we're gonna grind up more of these episodes. So bear with us. The music reviews are the priority.
We're enjoying this little bit of summer while we've got it here in Canada.
That too. But yeah, so the music reviews are the priority, but we're almost done, dear white people. So if you have any ideas of other controversial or interesting shows that you'd like us to go through, we would love to handle it, or take on the challenge per se, and you know, make this more of a request driven thing, even if it's a movie or whatever. You know, just holler at us, let us know what you think and what you care about.
Yeah.
On that note, so I'm pretty sure we've gotten like 100 subscribers since the last fucking episode came out. So if you're new here, it's
welcome.
Really great
Jumba.
I mean, you probably recognize us, but by now it's good to have you. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new and just clicked on it. Like the video if you like it. Comment, please, and share what you think. If you love it, how can we improve this? No feedback, it's hard to get better for y'all.
We just want to do a good job.
Anyway, peace.